Good morning. Today is Memorial Day, and with the pandemic, unfortunately, all the parades and memorial services that I normally attend have been canceled. It's a sad time, but it's a happy time to remember those veterans. Now, I say all that in preface to my recipe for today. I've decided to make the Pennsylvania German potato salad. Can't find my recipe, so this is from memory. I haven't made it in a long time because stores have all this pre-made stuff these days. But when we first got married, the one thing my husband said, or requested, was, please learn how to make my grandma's potato salad. It is the best. Her name was Ursula Carpenter, and she's gone a long time now. But I guess in memory of all our veterans, and also thinking about Grandma Sue, we called her, we're going to make some Pennsylvania Dutch potato salad. And what you start with is a 5-pound bag of potatoes, and you cube them. We've cubed potatoes a lot in the past, so we're going to cube a bunch today. And again, I personally do not take off the shells because they have the nutrients and vitamins in that we really need when we eat. Other people may choose to peel them, and that's okay, but we like the shells. The other thing I will say up front is that most people will want to dice a small onion to include in the potato salad, but my husband does not like onions, so therefore that will not be in mine, but it is certainly in most people's recipes. So let's get started. What we're going to do is boil the potatoes already cubed, and that saves having to handle them when they're hot or waiting for them to cool at the end. Again, it's all about, for me with my schedule, trying to figure out how to get everything done in a day. So cubing the potatoes in advance of boiling them, and then they also cook a lot quicker too because the heat gets on all sides of the cubes. If you think about it, it's not a bad deal, is it? I do wash the potatoes before I start so that they're clean. That's important. Once again, you'll need your favorite large pan in order to put the potatoes in and cover them with water and bring them to a boil. You also want to add a tablespoon of salt to the water, and that should make it tasty and help it to boil and keep the starches down. Here we go. I put the water in first this time, so it's splashing just a little bit. That's okay. Okay, we have a pan full of diced potatoes. We're going to stick them on the oven, on the old cook stove, and let them boil until you stick a fork in and it comes off clean. That means they're done and tender in the center, and it really shouldn't take that long. If we cover the potatoes, it'll bring them to a boil a little quicker, and it won't splash all over. So we'll let these potatoes cook, and we'll work on our dressing. Okay, this is simply called cooked dressing, and that's because you cook it on the stove, and it's just so good. We're going to start with probably our sugar, because that's a dry ingredient, and we're going to put in equal parts. I'm going to do 1 cup of sugar. This is a 1/2 cup measuring spoon that I keep in my sugar container, so I now have 1 cup of sugar in there. And then we're going to add a cup of vinegar, And we want to add 2 eggs. The eggs thicken it, and that of course makes it good. And this dressing soaks into the potatoes and just gives it a wonderful flavor. We're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If you take your favorite wooden spoon, you can just mix it all together to get it started. And then we're going to put this on the stove and bring it to a boil and turn the heat down a little bit so we don't scorch the bottom. And we're just going to cook this until it's a thicker consistency. And that'll be really good base for our sweet and sour Pennsylvania Dutch potato salad. We have both the potato dressing and the potatoes on the old cook stove, trying to get them to the right consistency. Okay, the dressing is cooked. There's consistency to it, but it's not real thick. Again, this will soak into the potatoes. So we're going to let it cool, and while it's cooling, I like to add a few more ingredients. One, of course, is parsley, and I always like a lot of parsley, so you know, a tablespoon is great. And I just use my hand to measure again. It's just what I do, but you can measure it on a tablespoon if you like. Mix that in, give it a little green and a little bit of different color in it. And I also, because we don't use onions, I think celery adds a great flavor, and I like the crunch it gives too. So I'm going to cut some celery here, and if you have some celery leaves in that, that's okay. And again, that'll help the salad dressing cool a little bit and also to thicken up just a wee bit. It's not a real thick. And the final ingredient that's not cooked, that you're going to be surprised that I add when it's cool, will be a cup of Miracle Whip, not mayonnaise. You want it to have some sass and some real flavor when you're eating it. A cup of vinegar, a cup of sugar, and a cup of Miracle Whip are the main ingredients. Okay, and here's our 2 tablespoons of margarine. That'll just melt right in there, and that'll make it taste really good. Oh, this looks lovely. And all of this helps it to cool down a little bit, so when we add the Miracle Whip, it doesn't melt the Miracle Whip. Alrighty, looks like we got our cup there. Like a lot of moisture, don't be afraid to double up on the recipe. Just makes it taste even better. And if you like pepper, you can add pepper. But I have a daughter who doesn't like pepper, so I'm going to leave the pepper out. They can season it to taste. It's that simple. Okay, I think that looks ready for the Miracle Whip. Now we just need the potatoes, and they're over there cooking, so this will be all ready to mix in once they cool down a little bit. That's the next thing, is don't want to put this on when it's really, really hot. Give it a, half an hour to cool down or so. My potatoes are done cooking, and I drained off the hot water, and I've had them sitting here beside the dressing to cool. While I was doing that, I was working on a nice fresh fruit salad to go along with our Memorial Day dinner. And I cut up an entire cantaloupe, an entire honeydew melon. I put in an entire pack of blueberries, and I'm just finishing a huge double pack of strawberries to put into there. And I think everyone will have a healthy, well-balanced meal between starches and vegetables and fruit salad. I also have some corn that I'm going to finish husking, and we'll have corn on the cob, and then just throw on the all-American hamburger. We're going to gently toss the fruit salad just so all the colors and types of fruit are exposed, and that can just then set until lunchtime. It's 9:30 in the morning. Lunch is at 12 noon. There's my fruit salad. Again, I have my 5 pounds of cooked potatoes and my dressing, which we made earlier, and everything is cool enough to mix together. And we're just gonna make sure we get it all in there. I like to make it the same day because it's much more moist. If you let it set overnight, you might have to add some more Miracle Whip because it truly soaks into the potatoes to make sure that the dressing covers all sides of the potatoes. Okay, that's it. That's our potato salad, and let's try it out. Perfect. I love it. I could sit here and eat a whole bowl of that right now, but it's not lunchtime yet, so I'll be good and wait for everybody else to come home. There's our potato salad. And while I'm husking this corn, I don't want to leave you until I tell you about my family that served in the military. My father, Jason Paschael Waybright, was in the Army, and he served during the Korean War. He was stationed at the Panama Canal and guarded the canal. That was his job. I don't know of more than that. He really didn't talk about it, but I just know that he seemed very proud of his service, and he actually was from West Virginia. He came here to Fort Indian Town Gap for training, and he enjoyed roller skating apparently, or I don't know where he roller skated in West Virginia, but all I know is he went to the casino roller rink, and that's where he met my mother, Jean Elizabeth Clements, and they were married, and I was born. I was the oldest of 4 children. So that's the story of my father, Jason. He was from the hills of West Virginia, and he was a tracker and a hunter, a fisherman, a real outdoorsman. He was a really good golfer, won lots of tournaments here in Lebanon County. He often partnered with Earl Wildesen, another great man who I remember from my childhood. They're both gone, but you know, I remember my dad today. And also there was my Uncle Ralph, who was a chief in the United States Navy, and he was stationed in all kinds of places. I remember he was in Germany. That's where he met my Aunt Annie, and they eventually became married. And he was stationed in Alaska and Washington, D.C., and I remember he was stationed in Florida because I actually went to visit him in Florida. When he was stationed in Washington, D.C., though, I was able to go to the National Museums for the first time, and that was awesome. That was a very memorable trip. The Smithsonian Institutes, I was very grateful for that. So I got new experiences out of that. And then my mom and dad's father, Harry J. Clements, James was his middle name, was in the Army as well. And I don't remember his rank, quite frankly, but I do know he was in the Army. And so he's another gentleman that I remember. And then there was my Uncle Charlie. Now, Uncle Charlie married Aunt Eva, who really was my great aunt because she was my Grandpa Harry's sister. And he was from Pine Grove, and she was here from Lebanon County. And they would go dancing to the big bands, the ballroom dancing. That was their thing. And in fact, he's the one that taught me how to dance. So that was really cool. We did that in his basement. He lived at Maple Street, at 5th and Maple Street in the city of Lebanon. when they were married that I remember. And he also was a businessman. He started Sunshine, oh, they called him Sunshine Charlie, and he had a Sunoco near Lincoln Avenue and Cumberland Street, 422, for those of you who grew up in the area or can remember back a ways. So he was just a well-known fella and a really good guy, and you know, they just always opened their door. Aunt Eva was the one that made the apple dumplings all the time for me. And the two of them together did not have any children. However, they treated us wonderfully as children, and you always felt special when you went over. So when they passed away, Uncle Charlie passed first, and then Aunt Eva, they had discussed leaving their estate to further the National Cemetery. They wanted to build a monument back there. And Governor Ridge, as I recall, had issued a challenge or decree whereby the state would match money that was donated by citizens. If they were sincere about building this, this is how it would get done. Well, my aunt and uncle took that to heart, and their estate was worth a little over $500,000, and that was the impetus to build the monument, the open-air amphitheater at the National Cemetery. And I can tell you, wow, when they dedicated that cemetery, I was asked to speak on behalf of the family as the oldest living child, and my mother was gone, my uncle was gone, etc. So it was quite the privilege, but I drew on a paper that my daughter wrote. I think she was in like 7th or 8th grade. Her and her friend Linda received an assignment from their teacher back in Northern Lebanon High School, their history teacher, to interview someone who lived through the Depression. And Uncle Charlie was really an amazing fellow, and he loved the military, he loved the uniform, and he would go to the, as a child or a young teenager, whatever, he would go to the movie theater up there in Pine Grove, and he would pedal the organ. Now, it had those papers that rolled through to play the music, because I guess some of them might have been still movies at the time, no talkies, I guess they would say. And then eventually came the talkies, but he would sit there and pedal the organ, and that way he got into the movies for free, and he was able to watch all the movies. And I remember he told about the different movies he liked so much, and I talked about all this based on, I was with my daughter when she did the interview for Uncle Charlie and Aunt Eva, and Linda didn't have anyone to interview, so since there was a couple there that both lived through the Depression, it worked out really well. And ironically, one of the things they talked about was growing potatoes, and a farmer would give them, I don't know, 50 chickens, and they'd grow the 50 chickens to full size, and then they'd give half the chickens back to the farmer and keep half for themselves. That's the kind of bartering they did in order to survive during the Depression. But Uncle Charlie and Aunt Eva, again, traveled all over the world, and I know they really enjoyed Japan. That was one of their favorite places, and they had lots of trinkets from Japan when they passed. I remember seeing those. But Uncle Charlie also was a major in the United States Army, and he started the Avenue of Flags back at the Gap, and he collected all the states of the United States, and of course American flags, and they accept American flags that drape the caskets of soldiers, and then they'll fly them at the Gap. And of course they need replaced on a regular basis as they wear out. They are 100% cotton. They can become frayed and tattered in the wind or faded in the sun. But in addition to the Avenue of Flags, he had this vision of completing the memorial at the Gap. So it is there, and it is an awesome, awesome thing. When they died, both of them were in front of the monument. There's like a little shelter there where they hold the final burial service, and so that was very special. And they did the 21-gun salute, and we got the bullets and the flags, and pretty memorable event. And that's my story and my memories to remember my relatives who served in this service on Memorial Day. So thank you for tuning in and your patience as I talk on and on. I'm sure you have your own memories to share, and I look forward to hearing about them as well. Have a great day.